Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues. And with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on episode 14 of the anime series Akagami no Shirayuki-hime, or Snow White with the Red Hair. Another fantastic episode. And I gotta say, they were talking in the previous episode about it taking potentially 14 days for Shirayuki's, mission statement to go to Tanbarun and attend this ball. And we see her in this episode trying to learn how to, dance for this gala event that she's meant to attend, and clopping on, the feet of the dance instructor to the point where when Obi comes with herbs and healing herbs and everything, I thought it was for, the dance instructor himself, but then she's using it too. Because it's just that crazy for her. She's really just a perfectionist and wanting to get this down. She's pleading with Obi to be, her dance partner because the instructor's out for the count and everything. But I was actually under the sort of misinterpretation that, with 14 days to prepare, as we were told in the previous episode, I believe, I had a feeling that it was going to play out in real time, that it would take 2 weeks for her to finally be leaving for Tanbarun. And so I was actually pleasantly surprised that that happened in this episode. What was really interesting about that is, like, all the way up through the course of the episode, it was very much about the preparations for leaving and all the characters, getting sort of set in their places. And they're looking, with Mihaya for this guy that was basically sent to find Shirayuki and bring her back to Tanbarun, or at least bring the message forth that they want her back in Tanbarun. And so I had thought, even like when I realized, okay, well, we're in the preparations, it's imminent that she's going to be leaving for Tanbarun, I had thought this episode was going to build up right to the point where she leaves, and then that would be it, and then the next episode would conclude with her arrival in Tanbarun. But no, again, pleasantly surprised as this episode is unfolding, she's leaving now, for all intents and purposes. And I love the really heartening elements between she and Zen. He's very embarrassed to go into her, for all intents and purposes, what is her bedroom and everything. Just that sweetness between them. But what I find really interesting too is with that time allotted, having figured, it would be like 2 weeks of episodes before they would actually be leaving, I had figured, as of last episode, well, this gives Obi enough time to try to persuade Zen to let him be the go-to guy, her protector, her armed guard, whatever you want to call it, her guardian and whatever like that. And sure enough, do we see in this episode, Obi steps up. And he actually challenges Zen. He goes with Mitsuhide and Kiki to get him, because he's still, sparring, kind of just air sparring, training himself, trying to keep himself limber, because of the potential threats of people who might be going after and seeking Shirayuki and everything. His sort of awareness is on high because they don't know where this guy is that sent this message forth to bring her to Tanbarun. And he's just really wanting to make sure he can protect her if at all possible. And so this sparring match is actually quite spectacular, because we see that monkey that Obi is once again flipping around and dodging blows and everything. Zen, not to be outmatched, actually breaks Obi's wooden sword, but then Obi kicks Zen's away. So without a sword, I thought it was really just honorable of Zen to be in that moment like, oh, look, you won. There's no way I can defeat you in hand-to-hand combat. Your skills are too great. You would outmatch me. It's kind of like that whole idea of he's been living this posh, enclosed life within the kingdom. No matter how hard he trains, it's never going to be quite as enough or on the same level of Obi, who's like kind of from the streets. He learned it by himself. He hasn't had that cushioning or that padding environment around him. He knows more firsthand what he needs to do to survive and all that kind of stuff. So I really loved that dynamic. But Obi is like macking on Shirayuki something fierce. He desperately wants to be the guy to look after her. He wants to protect her. I think there's a certain amount of reluctance on his part to even confront the fact that he likes her. Like, I know he's aware of it, but he's still, even to himself, he's kidding himself that I'm doing this for Zen. I want to, protect her for Zen. And at that point when, she's in the carriage and he sees that she's wearing that sort of hair clip, brooch, earring, whatever it is that he had picked out, or whatever it was to give Zen to give her, however that worked out. He's like shocked, and he's like, oh my goodness, that's the thing I picked out, And so it's like that whole dynamic. What really was the underwritten theme of this episode to me was, here we are now going to be exploring a long-distance relationship between Zen and Shirayuki, respectively, because you also have Izana. Izana's seeing them off, and he's, again, kind of getting off on the idea of, sticking it to his little brother. I wanted to see you depressed and her leaving, but you're kind of hunky-dory. I guess, you sent somebody you trust with her and everything like that. It didn't quite work. But let's see what happens now. With her not being in your life for a while, and they're talking about like it's going to be a month or whatever it is, a month or 2 months, that she's going to be gone. And she's only meant to spend 7 days in Tanbarun to begin with. But a lot of that is the travel time to and from. And so it's really going to be a test to see how well both of them exist. Very much on Zen's part, it's going to be how he can exist and how he can push forward without her. Izana wants to make sure that he is not just sort of sitting back and resting on his laurels and just making the most out of his life because Shirayuki's there, and that's the only reason. He has princely duties. He has a life to live without her. God forbid anything ever happened to her. What would he do? Would he just give up on his life? These are all the kinds of questions Izana is trying to put Zen through so he can examine it himself and he can prove himself. Or fail miserably, which Izana may actually want. You never know. But Shirayuki, too, in the idea that, the confrontation she has with Raj, he seems on the face of it to have reformed, to have become a nicer guy. But there are times like he's really nervous to be around her. He's nervous at the mention of when he's introduced to Obi, and Obi, references Zen. He's nervous around him for that reason. He's freaking out. We find out, Raj's sort of right-hand man, the Mitsuhide, to his Zen, is like, well, it actually was my idea to extend this olive branch to Shirayuki and have her come and thank her for putting Prince Raj on a more benevolent path and all these different things. And so Raj, he gets this evil grin. And it just leads me to think, number one, there's a whole spider web, in the background of manipulation going on between Izana, this Kazuki guy who, came from Tanbarun requesting that Shirayuki be brought back for Raj. Raj himself. It seems like there's so much foulness potentially going on and they might all be in cahoots. But even if that's not the case, Shirayuki's going to be truly put to the test now because she's got guys who are of means. She's in a far-off land, her homeland, but far off from where she's come to call home, Clematis. And she's going to have Obi, who's kind of pining for her, kind of interested in her. He kind of wanted to appoint himself as a pseudo-Zen for the lack of Zens being there. Raj, who's going to be kind of, maybe playing up this whole romantic feel of this gala ball. And don't you see how beautiful and mystical and magical your own homeland can be, just like that land from afar that you fell in love with? Wouldn't you be more happy coming back home, coming back to my arms, and all these kinds of things? Like, I really feel like they're going to try to romance her and wine and dine her. And it's going to be a test for her as well. Although I feel like there's much less of a risk for Shirayuki to give in to those kinds of temptations when they're laid across her plate, as it will be for Zen to kind of become depressed and give up and feel like he has nothing, no drive, no place in this world without her. I think there's more of a chance of him faltering than her, put it that way. And I like that I hope we kind of get a little bit of the ins and outs of what's going on back in Clematis as this is all happening with Shirayuki, because we have this little call to Ryu. He's doing his studies, or he's looking for another herb. He's trying to make a medicinal supplement or whatever it is. And absentmindedly, he calls out to Shirayuki. And of course, Garrett comes in and is like, oh, are you making medicine? And he's like, yeah. And it just seems like there is now a void for all of them in Shirayuki's absence. And so that is absolutely fascinating to me. Everyone is going to be feeling this absence. And it's going to be really a test for all of them to see how they can move forward. Zen especially, as I say, but Shirayuki as well. She has sort of her mission cut out for her. And who knows whomever she might meet at this gala ball event. It might not just be Raj trying to kind of, sweep her off her feet, or maybe even Obi getting involved. I have a feeling she may recoil from advances made by Raj into Obi's arms, and this will cause conflict for her. Now, at the end of the day, as I was telling my friend Dana, who is very much of the same mind, it's all about Shirayuki and Zen. That's the heart of this series, is seeing them come together. And I think what adds to the compelling nature of their relationship in the story is exploring them really truly being tested in the absence of each other. They are stronger together, but they both have shown previously an internal strength of their own accord, each of them. But now that they've become so accustomed to each other, it's going to be interesting to see if that resolve holds up as proficiently as it has in the past in the absence of each other. And so I'm banging on, I want to see Shirayuki and Zen come together, but part of me is also really curious to see what's going to happen as Obi potentially makes his move, or Raj does, or somebody else does, this, that, and the other thing. And piecing all that together, seeing this flesh itself out as the story progresses. And just great times. This series is much beloved by me. I loved the warmth and the compassion and the characterization and just these lovable characters. I only began to realize recently that I really love the voice actress's voice that voices Shirayuki. Like, there's something so calming and soothing about her voice, about her recital of the dialogue. And it's something, it's not just her, it's like everybody involved in the series, every aspect, from the music, which is melodic and beautiful, a very fantasy sort of framework. I recollect that a long time ago in season 1. One of the first estimations I had was when I was playing Dragon Quest VIII, an RPG, which kind of had a very mystical, magical framework as well. But a lot of the music, especially as you're roving around the world map, is very much in the vein of what you hear in this series. It has a very passive, calm aesthetic to it, sound to it. And it's just beautiful. And I absolutely love and adore it. I'm even starting, the OP, which I kind of sort of had problems with. I was much more fond of, the one for the first season. This one's growing on me. It's starting to give me that same feel, that same heartwarming, being welcomed home again feel as this series is, and the music is, and the characters are. And so, just an excellent episode. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below what you thought of episode 14 of Akagami no Shirayuki-hime, or Snow White with the Red Hair, if you've seen it, if you enjoyed it as much as I did, if you think there's any validity to be concerned that, Shirayuki is now going to be put to the test with these other potential romantic, benefactors trying to make moves on her. Whether or not you think Zen is going to man up, I believe in the long run he will, but will he maybe have, a couple stumbles and tumbles here and there as he has to now live his life for a time without her? And, another thing too, like, we're seeing hints once again of that whole potential for, shipping between Mitsuhide and Kiki, and I'm all for that. I'd love to see that. Are we ever going to see any of that? Let me know if you think so. If you speculate that could be possible in the comments below. Otherwise, that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.